Claire always thought her marriage was steady. After 7 years together, she and Daniel had built a quiet, comfortable life in Seattle. Their small house near the lake was filled with framed photos, soft laughter, and the scent of Daniel's favorite coffee. It wasn't perfect, but it felt safe. Yet lately, Claire sensed something had changed. Not in her love for Daniel, but in the way silence lingered between them. They still talked, still laughed, but their connection had started to fade, like a radio signal slowly losing strength. One Saturday evening, Daniel told her that his old college friend Evan was coming to visit. "You remember Evan, right? He's in town for a few days," he said casually while tying his shoes. Claire remembered. Evan had been at their wedding, the loud, confident guy who always had something to say, someone who filled the room with charm. She smiled politely back then, but never really got to know him. Now, after so many years, she wasn't sure what to expect. When the doorbell rang, Claire opened it to find Evan standing there with his familiar grin. He looked older, more serious, but his eyes were the same, observant, sharp, curious. "Claire, you look exactly the same," he said warmly. She laughed, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "That's a kind lie," she replied. He chuckled, stepping inside. The evening began simply: dinner, small talk, laughter about old memories between the two men. Claire watched as Daniel came alive in a way she hadn't seen in months. He joked more, smiled more. It was like Evan's presence pulled out the younger, more carefree side of him. Claire felt happy for that, but also strangely distant, like she was watching her own husband from across a screen after dinner. They all sat in the living room. The city lights shimmered through the window, and a soft rain began to fall. Evan leaned back on the couch, studying the couple with a thoughtful look. "You two seem solid," he said suddenly. "Most people I know from college are divorced by now." His tone was casual, but his eyes carried a quiet curiosity. Daniel smiled. "We've had our ups and downs, but yeah, we're doing fine." Claire nodded, though a small voice in her head whispered that things weren't as simple as they appeared. Evan tilted his head. "What keeps you two together? After so many years, I mean, most people lose the spark." Claire hesitated. It was a simple question, yet it hit deeper than expected. She looked at Daniel, hoping he'd answer, but he just shrugged lightly. "Trust, maybe. And patience." Evan smiled faintly. "Patience can keep things calm, but does it keep things alive?" The question lingered in the air. Claire felt a small shiver, not because of the cold, but because she realized she didn't know how to answer. There were no fights, no betrayals, no dramatic problems, just a quiet distance that had slowly grown. Later, when Daniel went to take a call in the other room, Evan and Claire were left alone. The rain tapped softly against the window, and the light from the lamp painted the room in warm gold. "He's a good man," Evan said softly. "Yes," Claire replied. "He really is." Evan studied her for a moment. "But you don't sound sure." She blinked, surprised. "What makes you say that?" He shrugged. "You have that look, like someone who's waiting to feel something again." Claire didn't know what to say. There was something disarming about Evan, not in a flirtatious way, but in how directly he saw people. It was like he could read the silence between words. She tried to laugh it off. "You talk like a therapist." "Maybe," he said with a grin. "Or maybe I just notice things people don't say." When Daniel came back, the air between them shifted again. Claire couldn't explain it, but she felt more aware of every word, every glance. The rest of the evening went smoothly, but the tone had changed. Before leaving, Evan smiled at both of them. "You two are lucky," he said. "Some people never get to test if what they have is real." Claire tilted her head. "Tess." He shrugged, grabbing his coat. "Sometimes you don't know how strong love is until it's questioned. That's all." After he left, Daniel seemed quiet. Claire asked if everything was okay, but he just said he was tired. They went to bed in silence. She lay awake for hours, replaying Evan's words in her mind. "You don't know how strong love is until it's questioned." It felt like a challenge, though she didn't understand why. The next morning, Evan called Daniel and invited them both to meet him for lunch downtown. Claire hesitated at first, but Daniel insisted. "He won't be around long," he said. So they went. The lunch felt different, lighter, friendlier. Yet, beneath the jokes and small talk, Claire sensed a quiet tension, as though something unsaid was slowly building. When Evan stepped away to take a phone call, Daniel leaned closer to Claire. "He's changed," he said quietly. "He used to be wild, but now he talks like he's testing people." Claire nodded. "He asked strange questions last night?" Daniel sighed. "Yeah, but that's just him, always trying to get under people's skin." Still, both of them felt it. Something about Evan's visit was stirring things they hadn't faced in years. That night, back home, Claire stood by the window while Daniel finished some work. She looked at the quiet street, the soft light falling on the porch, and realized how long it had been since she and Daniel had just talked, really talked about what they felt. Evan's words had shaken her more than she wanted to admit. When Daniel joined her by the window, he placed a hand on her shoulder. "You've been quiet today," he said gently. "Just thinking," she replied. "About what?" She hesitated. "About us, about whether we've stopped trying." Daniel frowned slightly. "Trying? I don't mean in a bad way," she said quickly. "Just, we used to be excited about everything, even small things. Now it's like we're comfortable, but distant." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he sighed, looking out at the night. "Maybe we got too used to each other? Life gets busy. Things get routine. Do you miss it?" she asked softly. He looked at her, a flicker of emotion crossing his face. "Sometimes," he admitted. The honesty in his tone startled her, but it also warmed her. For the first time in months, they were being real with each other. Evan's visit had done something unexpected. It had made them see what they had been ignoring the next evening. Evan called again, saying he wanted to stop by before leaving town. Daniel agreed, though Claire felt uncertain. When Evan arrived, his tone was lighter, but his eyes still carried that same quiet intensity. "You two talked," he said with a small smile, as if he already knew. Claire raised an eyebrow. "How do you know that?" "Because your energy feels different," he said. "See? Sometimes a little shakeup helps people remember what matters." Daniel chuckled. "You think you're some kind of relationship coach now?" Evan grinned. "Maybe, or maybe I just wanted to remind you not to take love for granted." Claire smiled faintly. "Well, you did that." The three of them talked for hours, not about the past, but about what made relationships last. What broke them? What people truly needed to feel seen. It wasn't dramatic or romantic. It was real, thoughtful, and honest. By the time Evan left that night, Claire felt something new. Not for Evan, but for Daniel. A deeper understanding. A renewed awareness of the quiet love they still shared. She stood by the window as his car disappeared into the rain. Daniel came up behind her, wrapping his arms gently around her waist. "You know," he said quietly, "I think he reminded me how lucky I am." Claire smiled, resting her head against him. "Maybe we both needed that reminder." The house was quiet again, but it felt different now, alive. Awake. What Claire didn't know was that Evan's visit wasn't random at all. He had seen something in Daniel's messages weeks earlier, a sense of distance, uncertainty, and wanted to help his old friend before things fell apart. But that truth would only come out later when a message meant for Evan accidentally reached Claire instead, reopening questions she thought were finally answered. And that was how their quiet, safe life began to change, all because one friend came to watch, not out of curiosity, but out of care. The next morning, Claire woke to the sound of raindrops tapping gently against the window. The house was quiet, a rare luxury in their busy lives. Daniel had already left for work, leaving her with a soft silence she both loved and feared. The previous evening's conversation with Evan replayed in her mind. It wasn't just his presence that had stirred her. It was the way he had noticed the subtle gaps in their marriage. The way he had spoken truths that neither she nor Daniel had voiced in years, as she made her coffee. Claire thought about what Evan had said. Sometimes a little shakeup helps people remember what matters. She had felt it immediately, a mixture of gratitude, curiosity, and unease. Gratitude because the reminder had brought her closer to Daniel again. Curiosity because she wondered what else Evan might know. Unease because she realized that she didn't fully understand how deeply Daniel had internalized his old friend's words. Claire scrolled through her phone, checking messages from friends, work updates, and the mundane notifications that normally filled her morning. Then something unusual caught her eye, a notification from Evan. She tapped it quickly, expecting a simple thanks again for last night, but instead, the message contained something more personal. I hope you and Daniel talked about what we discussed. I had to leave early, but remember, he's lucky to have you and you're lucky to have him. Keep the spark alive. The message made her pause. There was warmth in Evan's words, but also an undertone of something she couldn't quite name. It was as if he were reminding her to take notice, to see what she had been ignoring. And she felt a strange mix of gratitude and apprehension. She set her phone down and took a deep breath, thinking about Daniel. How often had they gone days without truly reflecting on their connection? She realized how much she missed the genuine emotional conversations they had when they first met. Later that morning, Daniel called. "Hey, how's your morning?" he asked cheerfully. Claire smiled, hiding her curiosity about Evan's message. "It's quiet," she said. "Too quiet, maybe." He laughed lightly. "Good for you, I guess. Gives you time to think." Claire frowned slightly. "Think about what?" "About us," he said, almost playfully, but there was seriousness in his tone. "About how we're doing. About everything we take for granted." She felt a small jolt. Daniel had taken Evan's words to heart. They weren't just talking about a fleeting idea, they were truly considering how their marriage had evolved. By midday, Claire decided to clean the house. Moving through each room, she noticed things she hadn't paid attention to in months. The framed photos of their wedding day, the small gifts they had exchanged on anniversaries, the way sunlight fell on the kitchen counter. Each object reminded her of the years they had shared and the love that had quietly endured. She realized that while life had become routine, the foundation of their relationship was still strong. When Daniel returned from work, he seemed different, not in a dramatic way, but in a subtle shift that Claire immediately noticed. There was a tentativeness in his gestures, a softness in his tone. "Dinner soon?" he asked. Claire nodded. "Sure, give me a minute to finish up here." As they sat down to eat, the conversation flowed differently than usual. They talked about their work, their weekend plans, and even reminisced about past vacations. But beneath the ordinary words, there was an undercurrent of something deeper. An acknowledgement of what they had been missing and a willingness to reconnect. Later, Daniel suggested a walk along the nearby lake. Claire agreed, feeling the excitement of doing something spontaneous. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening with fresh reflections of the city lights. They walked hand in hand, a gesture that had become rare in recent months but felt surprisingly comforting now. "I've been thinking," Daniel said suddenly, breaking the silence, "about what Evan said last night." Claire glanced at him. "What about it?" "That we've become too comfortable. That we need to notice each other again, really notice." She squeezed his hand. "I've noticed, and I want that too." Their walk continued, filled with quiet reflections and shared memories. They talked about small things, favorite books, meals. They wanted to try cooking together and even movies they had missed. It was a night of rediscovery, simple yet profound. Returning home, they found Evan waiting on the porch. Claire was surprised she hadn't expected him back so soon. He greeted them warmly. "I couldn't resist dropping by one more time before I leave town," he said. Daniel laughed lightly. "You're persistent." Evan shrugged. "Only persistent when it matters." He looked at Claire with a small, thoughtful smile. "You two are doing well. I can see it." Claire felt a wave of relief. Evan's presence, which had initially stirred unease, now felt like a gentle nudge toward clarity. "Thank you," she said softly, "for helping us." See? They spent the evening together, talking about life, friendship, and the lessons learned over the years. Evan shared stories from his own experiences, moments of growth, challenges in relationships, and reflections on how to nurture meaningful connections. Claire listened, fascinated not by the stories themselves, but by the sincerity behind them. As Evan prepared to leave, he turned to Claire and Daniel. Remember, it's the little things that keep people close. A smile, a kind word, noticing each other. Daniel nodded. We'll remember, I promise. Claire felt a warmth in her chest. There was something about the evening that had shifted her perspective. Not only about her marriage, but also about herself. She realized that she had been waiting for change to happen externally, when in reality, the power to restore closeness had always been within her and Daniel. Once Evan left, Claire and Daniel sat together on the couch, holding hands. I didn't realize how much I missed talking like that, Claire admitted. Me too, Daniel said. It made me think about what we've been neglecting, not because we don't care, but because life distracted us. They shared a long, comfortable silence, letting the evening settle over them. It wasn't dramatic or filled with fireworks, but it was honest, real, and exactly what they needed. Later, while Claire prepared for bed, she checked her phone again. Evan had sent one last message. Take care of what you have. It's rare, and it's worth it. She smiled, feeling grateful. His visit, though brief, had become a catalyst for RECONNECTION. As she slipped into bed, Daniel beside her, Claire reflected on the past 2 days. The routine they had grown accustomed to wasn't bad, it was just incomplete. Now, with renewed awareness and effort, she felt a spark returning, a quiet excitement, a shared commitment to notice and nurture what they had, filled her heart. That night, they didn't just sleep side by side. They were awake to the possibilities of their marriage. And while Evan's intentions had been simple, a friend offering perspective, the impact on their lives was profound. Yet, unknown to Claire, Evan had left something behind, a note tucked into the book he had borrowed from their shelf. It wasn't just a reminder. It was a subtle challenge to continue growing, to never settle, to embrace the moments that mattered. The following morning, Claire found the note. It read, "Love is tested not when it's easy, but when it's quiet. Notice it, protect it, cherish it." Reading the words, she realized that life had a way of teaching lessons when least expected. And while Evan had departed physically, his influence lingered, gently guiding her and Daniel toward deeper connection and understanding. Claire smiled, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. The quiet unease she had felt before Evan's visit had transformed into clarity and emotional strength. For the first time in months, she felt fully present, not only for herself, but for Daniel and the life they were building together. And so, the days following Evan's departure were different. Simple moments, a shared cup of coffee, a walk in the park. Laughter over silly jokes became meaningful reminders of what truly mattered. They were small gestures, but they carried immense weight. It wasn't about grand declarations or dramatic actions. It was about noticing, valuing, and cherishing what had always been there, waiting to be seen. By the end of the week, Claire felt a profound change. Their marriage, once quietly drifting, had found its rhythm again. And though Evan was gone, his words, his presence, and his thoughtful nudges continued to echo, shaping the way she and Daniel approached each day, not as routine, but as a conscious choice to stay connected, engaged, and deeply aware of one another. The following week, Claire felt a new sense of awareness. Life hadn't magically changed overnight, but her perspective had. She noticed the small moments, Daniel's gentle humming while making coffee, the way he paused to ask how her day was, the quiet glance they shared across the kitchen table that said more than words ever could. These little things, often overlooked in the busyness of life, now felt monumental. Claire realized that she and Daniel had allowed routines to mask the love and attention they still held for each other. And Evan's visit had been a catalyst to rediscover that. One morning, Claire woke earlier than usual. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, and the house smelled of rain from the night before. She sat at the window, holding her cup of coffee, thinking about the note Evan had left behind. Love is tested not when it's easy, but when it's quiet. Notice it, protect it, cherish it. The words resonated deeply. She realized that relationships weren't just about the big moments, anniversaries, birthdays, vacations, but about consistently choosing to be present, attentive, and caring every single day. Daniel joined her in the kitchen, his usual morning energy replaced with something gentler, more thoughtful. "Good morning," he said, handing her a small bouquet of flowers he'd picked from the garden. Claire smiled, surprised and touched by the gesture. "I just thought we could start the day with something nice," he said. It was simple, but it carried weight. She felt the connection they had been missing, the intentional care that was now slowly returning throughout the day. Claire noticed herself feeling more alive in their interactions. When Daniel called during lunch, she found herself smiling in a way she hadn't in months. Their conversations were more meaningful. They laughed together, shared small stories from their morning, and even talked about dreams they had for the future. There was an energy between them that hadn't been present for a long time, subtle yet undeniable. That evening, Daniel suggested they cook dinner together. Claire agreed eagerly, excited by the idea of doing something ordinary in a new, intentional way. They moved around the kitchen with ease, chopping vegetables, stirring sauces, and occasionally stealing glances at each other that spoke volumes. The atmosphere was playful, warm, and intimate. In a clean, wholesome way, two people reconnecting. Emotionally, not physically, finding joy in shared effort and conversation. As they sat down to eat, Daniel reached across the table, holding Claire's hand. "I've been thinking a lot about what Evan said," he admitted. "About noticing each other. I don't want us to get lost in the routine again. I want us to make time for this, for us every day." Claire's eyes softened. "I feel the same way. It's easy to forget, but I want to remember. I want to be present with you." They ate slowly, savoring not only the food, but the moment itself. Dinner became a ritual, a shared space where they could reconnect without distraction, a quiet celebration of their renewed awareness and commitment. Afterward, they went for a walk in the neighborhood, enjoying the evening breeze and the soft hum of distant traffic. Walking side by side, they talked about memories, hopes, and small dreams. It was gentle, unhurried, and deeply grounding. A reminder that closeness didn't always require grand gestures. Later that week, Claire and Daniel decided to plan a weekend getaway, a simple cabin by a nearby lake away from the demands of daily life, packing for the trip. They laughed over forgotten items and debated over small details, like who would choose the playlist for the drive. These moments, once mundane, now felt like treasures, small reminders that life was meant to be shared, cherished, and experienced together fully. On the day of the trip, the drive itself became part of the experience. They sang along to songs from their youth, reminisced about past adventures, and even took turns sharing stories they had never told each other before. Claire realized how much she had missed these conversations, how much intimacy they could find simply through openness and attention. There was no tension, no pressure, only the joy of rediscovery. Arriving at the cabin, they were greeted by the quiet beauty of the lake and surrounding woods. The water shimmered under the late afternoon sun, and the air smelled fresh with pine and damp earth. They unpacked, prepared a simple meal together, and spent the evening sitting by the fireplace, talking and laughing. Daniel shared an anecdote from work that made Claire laugh until tears came to her eyes. And she told him about a book she had been reading that inspired reflection. Each moment reinforced the bond that had been temporarily clouded by routine and distraction. As night fell, he stepped outside to look at the stars. The sky was clear, the constellations bright, and the silence of the lake reflected their newfound peace. Claire felt a quiet contentment she hadn't experienced in months. "It feels like we've found something again," she whispered. Daniel nodded, his arm around her shoulders. "We have, and we're going to hold on to it this time." The weekend continued in the same vein, long walks along the shore, sharing quiet breakfasts, and moments of reflection that strengthened their emotional connection. They realized that their relationship wasn't broken, but it had needed attention, care, and intention. Evan's visit had reminded them to notice, to cherish, and to communicate openly. It was a lesson in mindfulness applied to love and partnership, a lesson that would carry them forward long after the weekend ended. Returning home, Claire felt a renewed sense of gratitude for her marriage. She noticed details she had previously taken for granted. Daniel's thoughtful gestures, the way he smiled when he saw her, the simple comfort of sharing daily life together. Each observation was a reminder that love didn't always announce itself with grand declarations. Sometimes it lived in the quiet attentions, the daily choices, and the shared understanding that they were building a life together. Days turned. In 2 weeks, and Claire and Daniel continued to nurture their relationship intentionally. They set aside time for meaningful conversation, shared new experiences, and maintained the small rituals that had reignited their connection. The presence of Evan's influence lingered in subtle ways, through reminders and messages, reflections from the past, and the understanding that relationships required continual care. One afternoon, as Claire was tidying the living room, she found a photograph of the three of them, Claire, Daniel, and Evan, from a dinner just weeks before. She smiled, recognizing the impact Evan had had on their lives, not as an intruder or disruptor, but as a catalyst for clarity, reflection, and reconnection. It wasn't about drama or excitement. It was about awareness, attentiveness, and the choice to nurture what mattered most. Claire reflected on how easy it had been to drift into routine, how simple gestures had the power to bridge gaps that seemed insurmountable, and how moments of honest reflection could reignite intimacy and connection. She realized that life was full of opportunities to notice, appreciate, and love intentionally. And that perhaps was the most important lesson of all. As the months progressed, their bond deepened. Claire and Daniel laughed more freely, spoke more openly, and held space for each other's thoughts and feelings. The foundation of their marriage, once clouded by the busyness of life, became stronger with each intentional action. They discovered joy in small things, cooking together, taking walks, or simply sitting quietly, appreciating each other's presence. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Daniel reached for Claire's hand. "I never want to take this for granted again," he said softly. "Neither do I," Claire replied, leaning her head on his shoulder. "It's the little things that matter most." And in that quiet, shared understanding, they found the true essence of their love, steady, resilient, and nurtured by awareness and care. Evan's brief presence had sparked reflection, but the lasting change came from their commitment to notice, cherish, and grow together. Claire realized that the journey of love wasn't linear or flawless, but it was meaningful when both partners were willing to engage, reflect, and prioritize each other. And for the first time in a long while, she felt a profound sense of peace and hope, a realization that love, when nurtured, could endure the trials of time and the quiet challenges of daily life. As night fell and the stars appeared once more, Claire and Daniel sat together, hand in hand, hearts aligned. Their home, once a space of routine and distraction, had become a sanctuary of awareness, connection, and intentional care. They had rediscovered each other not through dramatic gestures, but through the steady, mindful choices that nurtured their relationship every single day. And in that renewed connection, Claire understood that love's true power lay not in grand declarations, but in the commitment to notice, protect, and cherish the moments that mattered, the small, everyday instances that formed the foundation of a life shared and a bond strengthened.